Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, I want to recognize and thank the Dora Foundation and Eaton Vance for making this program possible. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. Karen Smith, who's with us today, is an arts educator and self-taught artist and founded We Wield the Hammer as a response to meeting young girls in Senegal who grew up with the belief that women do not wield the hammer. She started an in-person program in Oakland, California, to train young girls of African descent in metalwork and has now relocated to Durham, North Carolina, which has a story behind it, and we'll learn the reasons behind that in this program. Along with Ann Cahoon, who's also with us, a graduate, instructor, and department head of our jewelry making and repair program, we will talk about inequities in the jewelry trade, the necessity of arts education, and engaging your brain in new ways. But first, we're going to ask Karen to tell us the origin story of We Wield the Hammer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be in conversation with you all, especially you, Ann. The origin story is I went to Senegal I created an apprenticeship for myself to learn how to learn the traditional methods of metalsmithing. Because I'm self-taught, and because I'm self-taught, I always felt really insecure and, like I didn't understand proper techniques or anything like that. And also, to be perfectly transparent, I was hurting myself because, for instance, I didn't know how to hold a hammer properly. So I created an apprenticeship for myself there. And it was really challenging because when I first decided I wanted to go there, I reached out to a couple people who reached out to a couple people. And one of them was a Senegalese man who said, "Doesn't she know that in Senegal, women don't wield the hammer?" And I said, "I don't know that." And he said, "Does it matter?" And I said, "No." He was like, "Good, because it's time for that to change." And so I got that apprenticeship, but while I was there, it was so clear. I worked in a shop with all men. I worked in a village with all men. And a lot of them, found me an oddity. But a lot of the young women and girls who walked by were just stunned. And the catalyst for We Will the Hammer came from one child who used to come by and just stand in the doorway and watch me every single day. And no matter, I literally would speak to this child in 4 different languages and she would not respond. And finally I asked my teacher's son, "Why won't this kid talk to me? Kids like me." And he said, "Because she thinks you're a ghost." And I was like, "How could she think that? She's been seeing me every day for months." And he said, "Right, but she's never seen any other woman do what you do." And in that instant, I knew now that she's seen a woman do what she's never seen a woman do, she can dream it for herself. And if she wants to do it, who's going to teach her? And that's literally the catalyst for We Will the Hammer.
Mm-hmm. And started in Oakland, California.
When I got back to Oakland, I decided that the program needed to incubate where I lived because I didn't live in Senegal. So I'm actually also on the jewelry faculty of the Crucible, which is an industrial arts school in Oakland. And so I brought the program to the Crucible and, I needed to figure out the ins and out of the program. How long should it take? What is the curriculum going to look like? All of that, because in my naivete, I thought, okay, I'll incubate it here and then I'll pick it up and take it to Dakar. And it's not that simple. And the program is a good one. And I'm really proud of what it is and what it's turning into.
But you ultimately were intent on taking it back to Senegal. Is that what you're saying? Or you wanted it to, yeah.
No, the vision absolutely is about bringing the program to Senegal.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I'm super clear about and why we target marginalized young people is because not everyone will have the opportunity to go to college. Not everyone even knows that they could be a jeweler. Not everyone knows that they can make a living as an artist, and so we want to offer access and opportunity to those who otherwise would not know or understand that. And so the program has always and is envisioned in Senegal, where there's a large population of women who are divorced, who are working class, who are mothers without partners, and more.
We will get into this question of the first group of women or girls that were in your incubator, but I want to go back to something you just said that you and Ann have spoken about that not many people understand what is happening as a metalsmith and what's going on there, and that they don't know they can do that, and then all of the good fruit that comes from learning how to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and Ann will attest to this, I think access is a thing that gets us over, because access allows us space to tap into our creativity. It allows us space to breathe. It allows us space to grow. It allows us to do different jobs better when we can tap into our creativity. But I didn't know that I could become a metal artist. And I have a background in academia, right? I mean, I did not go to art school though, and I didn't, do a BFA or an MFA program, and so, I'm fairly cosmopolitan, I'm fairly intelligent, and I didn't have access to what is now my life.
What was the one catalyst for you? What was the one change that's like, oh, I can do this? And this is a second part question. Why did you choose metals?
So divorce was the catalyst. And it so happens that today is my wedding anniversary. And I haven't thought about this in a very long time. But when I got divorced, I decided that I never wanted to do another thing unless it not only brought me joy, but it also fed me spiritually and creatively. So I started a business where I was working with beads and making malas and rosaries and thicker beads. And, it was mindfulness based. And then I just would have visions of things that I wanted to create. Right. And so I started looking around for a program because, again, I have a background in academia. And so I think, oh, I want to learn something, I have to go to school. But I left graduate school with no debt. When I started looking at programs, I was like, yeah, no, I can't do that. Like, it just was not feasible for me at that point in my life. And so I just got some books. Shout out Tim McCree. I got, looked at some videos, and I just practiced, and until I got it, until I felt comfortable.
And was there something specific about going into metals, or was that just the natural segue from what you were doing with beads?
You know what? I had a bride who wanted a custom bracelet for her wedding, and my idea envisioned a locket that was bezel set, and then the band of it was crystals and pearls and what have you, except I didn't know how to set a bezel, right? And so I just realized that I was just dreaming up things, and I needed to learn how to do them, and if I'm nothing else, I'm resourceful. So
I just want to pause for our audience. If you see Ann fleeing out of frame, it's because we have the sensor lights in our school here. So she's
and
just
I am alone
to...
in the shop right now. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm not sitting in the dark wearing a desk lamp as a hat. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
No worries.
So I want to ask both of you to, because we've discussed it before, there's a lot of weight and meaning behind working with metal specifically that we've all spoken about as being women and the power that comes with that, and maybe why you chose that direction for We Wield the Hammer, metals specifically. And Anne, you talk about it, about, what does metal mean for you?
It's so interesting to hear you say, Karen, that you came to a crossroads at a turning point in your life. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to, overshare or speak for universally for the North Bennett Street School community, but I do know from my personal experience, I came to the program, with the modest goal of completely reshaping my life because I wasn't happy with where I was. And I talked to so many students who come to this program and to other programs seeking really profound change on so many different levels. And sometimes, yes, it is just vocation, but so often it's something so much deeper than that. Absolutely. And I can't really speak to other programs, but I know here in metals, like people come here seeking a lot and also kind of turning away from a lot as well. It's amazing how consistent that is throughout my student body.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine, because this absolutely was a turning point in my own life. And, as far as metals is concerned, I think metals chose me, right? Like, I can't actually tell you why. And I just know that I would dream things in metal. And, the first time I learned how to texture something with a hammer, I was like, yes. The first time I really felt comfortable holding a torch, because I have been afraid of fire since I was a child. So I was like, oh, I'm never going to learn how to do this because I was afraid of fire. And what I have found is so many girls and women are afraid of fire, right? And they're afraid of manual labor. And, I don't think about this as manual labor, but certainly we are using our bodies, to create. And I think it's really, really important. And what you said about how this is the place that people come to change, or when they are changing the trajectory of their lives. Metals absolutely put me on a different path.
Yeah. It's funny. I came to jewelry really fascinated by gems and gemstones. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, gems and gems, we just hold those with metal. Like I wasn't all that fascinated with metalwork. And there was just something about the physicality and the precision that really spoke to me where I was and just took me in this whole new direction. It was really, and it's for me at this point, it's all metal all the time. I don't really care about any of the rest of it. It's the best part.
And I've heard you say before, wood, no.
Oh, wood, no.
And in the same sentence, I've heard you say metals. This could have been you or someone else, but metals, because you can then take them back down to nothing and start again. And
yeah, I don't know if I've said that, but it's absolutely true.
Absolute truth. Yes.
I don't understand. So you're working with wood and you make sawdust, and there is nothing you can do with, there's no wood stretcher. There's no,
Claire Fruitman might tell you there is one somewhere around here.
I know that's a hazing trick. We all know. No, but for me, there's just this lack of precision that I find incredibly frustrating, and it makes me feel kind of incompetent. Mm-hmm. But with metal, it's very, very precise, and it's very rigid, and it's very specific, and you tell it what to do, and it does it. And
when you understand, that's exactly right. And when you understand how to tell it what to do, it does exactly what you want.
Yep.
I mean, and this is so true. One of the things that I like to tell students all the time, and I like to tell anybody who will listen, formal training, whether it's, through a university or, a course or a training program, whatever, it's really important. right? Because when I decided I was going to do this, I had no idea that I should likely start with copper because it's cheaper, right? Like I had no idea. So I started with silver because I liked silver. I learned what reticulation was really quickly, even though it took me a long time to learn the name.
But back to the point we were making earlier, you hit the reset, you remelt it, and there's something really empowering about that. Like I can screw this up, but I can fix it.
And that's exactly where I was going. It's like I had little lumps of things and I didn't throw them away. And, then I got a crucible. I got access to a crucible, and it was like, like, because you can start again.
So I hear three things in that maybe lend themselves to the impetus to start We Wield the Hammer, or your passion behind metalwork, Anne, is it's forgiving. Mm-hmm. You can tell it exactly what to do and it does it, which is maybe something that, you can't do in the rest of your life. And that's difficult. And three, that it is, I just forgot the third thing. I will get to it. It was right there. Three, that it represents change, that if you're coming into this world because you are ready for a change, what a perfect example of something that can constantly change.
Right.
Yeah.
It's right.
And to take that, and to take that a little bit further, and this is just sort of, I'm hearing a conversation that's making me reflect. I wonder if part of what makes this, whether you're getting into it or not, frankly, there's something really empowering about wanting to make a change and then being in this discipline where there is a level of precision and control, and you dictate the outcome through your own determination, intelligence, skill. And there's something really empowering about that if you're coming out of a situation that is suboptimal for whatever reason.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I like to say too is, I got steered away from science and math when I was in high school, because, and so I've always not been that since then, I've not been that interested in math and science, right? And always thought of myself as not, smart in those areas. Well, working with metal, you got to know science, you got to know math, right? And I do that, and I do it pretty damn well, right? And so it's empowering in so many ways, right? But for me, most specifically, is that I get to use my body the way I want to use it to create what I want to create. And that is the best. That is the best part.
So sorry, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and I think that's such an important perspective, for me as a bench jeweler to hear, because I sometimes don't think of my work in those broader philosophical terms. It's so true. It's such a true reflection on what we do. But sometimes I think we can get, I don't want to speak for all bench jewelers, but I think some of us can get a little granular and a little hyper focused. So I love that perspective.
Well, and I think that's unfortunate, because I think what bench jewelers do is so extraordinary, right? Like, you have to be precise. You have to be focused. In order to do, it's one of the reasons why I knew I couldn't be a bench jeweler. Because there's a kind of precision, that's really, really necessary, right? And, and in order to do that kind of production, it's, to me, it's like magic. It's like it's like one of the things about this whole vocation / art form, because I like calling it a vocation, that is really important. There's so many pieces that are necessary.
Mm-hmm. Can we direct this conversation back to how you started in Oakland, the incubator and the group of young women that you started with? And then I also want, if you can lead that to how we ended up where you are now in Durham.
Okay. What do you want to know?
I want to know, what was the core group that you started with? Who were the first young women to take this program?
The core group were young women that I just reached out to that I found on social media and through friends of friends of friends on social media, like daughters of friends of friends of friends and things like that. And it was a small group, and they were pretty, they ran the gamut. They were really very interested in learning how to do this, to, wow, I can play with fire, right? Like, and it was like that kind of, that range. And it was a small group.
And what ages are we talking?
14 to 24.
Yeah.
I have allowed in a 13-year-old who is extraordinarily mature. But for the most part, it's 14 to 24. Mm-hmm. So we incubated in Oakland because I lived in Oakland. And one of the problems in Oakland now is that there just isn't any care or attention or support for artists and arts education, period, right? Like, Oakland is being overrun by developers and folks who want to be there because it's cool, but who want to get rid of all the things that made it cool to begin with.
That sounds familiar.
Exactly. So gentrification and the lack of care is what has been hardest resuming in Oakland. Because in Oakland, we have been looking for our own space for March will make 2 years. We were located at the Crucible, but like, one of the things that I learned is that people often think about our program as a series of workshops, and it's not. It's a training program. So you need time dedicated. You need certain hours, in a day. Then you need hours for studio time. Then you need to be able to meet, one-on-one. We needed the kind of autonomy and attention that we just couldn't get there. So we started looking for a place, and we still are looking for a place in Oakland, but nothing is coming to fruition. We actually just had a place snatched out from under us by a developer. A small jewelry company literally called me up and said, we're moving and we want you to take over this space. We know it's good, it's big enough, and we want to support you and, what have you. And the developer just snatched it out from under us. So I have actually been approached by people from different places, like, why don't you bring We Will the Hammer to this place or that place or this place? And I chose Durham because Durham still really cares about artists and arts education. And, I started looking for a place in July, and we signed a lease on September 1st. Mm-hmm. And it's affordable, which means we don't have to scramble. And, it's a great space. And, it's just really hard. I had no idea what it was like to run a nonprofit. I am learning that as I go along. But it's really hard to swim against disdain or disinterest, which is even worse. Mm. And I moved to Oakland in 1995 because it was the hippest place that I knew outside of Brooklyn, New York, which is where I'm from. So many artists, so much culture. It was sophisticated and interesting. And almost all of that has been sucked out of the city. And there's still a population of young women who could benefit from this program.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we are still located in Oakland. We're just in need of affordable studio space.
What's the current situation in your current space? Are you about to be kicked out, or you just have it and it's temporary and you're not sure when?
In Oakland?
Yeah, in Oakland.
We don't have a space in Oakland. We've been looking for a space.
So nothing. No young women are working in this program.
No
right
young
now in
women
Oakland.
are working in Oakland. So the program got put on hold. We finished our one of our last cohort 2 days before the shutdown because of COVID, right? And so for a year, you know, we couldn't work anyway, but we were still looking for a place, right? And, you know, we have just been looking. I mean, it's actually tragic and it's heartbreaking because there is so much money in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Like there is so much money in the Bay Area. There is so much, and it is simply not available to arts and artists. It's tragic.
This might be a naive question on my part, but you know, arts education is the overall budget tiny, or is it going into specific directions in school systems that just does not fuel nonprofits like what you were trying to do? Or is it overall down?
I think overall is down. I mean, the city has reduced the amount that of grants that they award to individual artists and to organizations. The city has you know, turned its back on various and sundry artists and organizations because they are clamoring for developers and they are clamoring for tech support. And I get it, right? Like I get that, you know, tech is important, but where would any of us be without arts? You know, the arts have been slowly leaving schools, public schools. And, you know, I can still remember classes that I took in elementary school. I can still remember classes I took in high school, you know, and what it meant for me, just in terms of understanding Shakespeare, right? Like, you know.
Transformative. So, I mean, I think all of us, and probably everyone who's watching this program, can remember that one time in elementary or middle school, that teacher or paper project or whatever that flipped a switch in your brain that's like, oh, I want to do creative things for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is your outreach plan now that you're in Durham, or do you already have a new cohort in your new place?
So we have our space. It is located in the Liberty Arts Sculpture Studio, which is a collective of artists here in Durham. And they have been at this for a very long time. A lot of brilliant artists who teach classes and that kind of thing. So part of our outreach is utilizing their already existing network and, you know, getting out there as a part of Liberty Arts. We are also building out the space that we're using inside of the building, because you want to be able to control the climate a little bit. So, you know, we're building out our space that we're going to use. And so we are really, really gunning for starting the program again with the winter. And I'm thrilled.
What is your hope for the young girls that go through your program? You know, learning things or walking away with things that aren't even jewelry or metal affiliated, you know, other life lessons, other things that you walk away with, or jewelry related. Like, do you want them to go into the jewelry industry?
I think both. Like, I think I would love to see young women who are interested in going into the jewelry industry go into the jewelry industry, right? Like, we know that there's not enough representation. We know that there's, you know, a lack of faces like mine in the industry. And so I would love to see them, go into the industry if that's what they're interested in. If they're interested in doing something else, I would love to see them do that as well. Because our program is not just a training program, it's sort of, it has a couple other components like, how to write a business plan or, or mentorships, that come along with it. But one of the things that I already see happening and that I'm always thrilled to see happening is young women walking away with the idea that they can do whatever they decide they want to do. And one of the hardest things for me is watching young women come in and try something. And on the first time, if it's not perfect, they're like, I can't do this. And I don't remember that, right? But I also didn't grow up influenced by social media and, the perfection of Instagram and all that. And I watch how it causes, paralysis almost with some of these young women. And if I could chip away at that in any way, or if I could smash that all the way, then I feel like I've succeeded. And every time, I have some young woman who's like, I can't do this. And one of my favorite stories is I had a young woman and, I was teaching them how to use the saw, right? And, she tried and it was like, it won't work. I'm like, of course it works. People have been doing this for thousands of years. Absolutely, it works. It's like, it doesn't work. I'm like, okay. So, I sat with her and showed her how to do it. And she was all frustrated. She's like, I can't do this. I'm like, what is happening here? Right? Like, what is happening here? Of course you can do it. You haven't learned how to do it yet. Right? And so like when I even point out things like, well, of course you can't do it yet because you haven't learned how, then something goes, oh, okay. And it gives them permission to try. Mm. So, within the hour, she had figured out, how to do it. And she was great, just the way she was holding it. And so then she was turning to her seatmate, if you hold it like this. And I thought, really? And, I teased her about it later and she was like, yeah, I know. But, she was holding it too tight. And I was like, right. That's the thing that I want to see. I want to see young women come into their own as able and that things are possible and that learning is as amazing as doing. Like the process of learning how to use anything is to me as much fun as using it, particularly when you are learning how to do it correctly. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I want to see. But I mean, that's always what I want my students to take away from anything that I have ever taught.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. One of the things that we say here in JM, and I'd never thought of it as a life lesson until you were talking about this expectation of perfection. One of the things we really strive for is observation without judgment. Because one of the things that we talk about, we're setting this incredibly high bar and everything has to be just so. And it's not an arbitrary judgment. It actually needs to be this very specific high standard in order to solder or to set that stone. Right. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is how you can observe your work without judging it. And one of the things that I see happening is it's also you're learning to observe yourself without judging yourself, because it's so hard not to get all your own stuff wrapped up. And it's like, it's a prong, but no, it's not a prong. It's actually about something entirely different some days. It's
absolutely.
So as you're mentioning that, it just makes me think of that observation without judgment, observation, not judgment.
I'm totally going to put that on the whiteboard as soon as it goes up. Observation without judgment.
Spread the word.
I love it. Because it's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just mentioned, representation in the jewelry industry. Can we talk about that a little bit? What are the access barriers?
Capital. Like capital is one, but also, it's really challenging to network, when you're nobody, right? We
let me
just
let me
had,
let me pause you there, because those are that you just named two things that were discussed before: inroads, and by capital you're meaning materials and space. I just want to clarify
absolutely.
that.
Mhm.
Like, that's something that many people don't think about, is the cost of materials alone in jewelry making.
Absolutely.
Especially when you
Absolutely.
try to teach yourself in silver.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's I do a live Instagram interview show that I really need to get back to. But I interview a lot of different metal artists on that show, and I've talked to people who are now getting attention, who've been like laboring for 20 years or more, and now all of a sudden they're overnight famous. And what's really interesting to me, I don't know if you're aware, but Sotheby's just did this huge exhibition. Actually, it's going on now, of Black jewelry designers, and, it's a big deal. And, I'm being a little bit sarcastic because it actually is a big deal, right? But I don't think that there are any of those amazing, extraordinary artists who haven't been working for years and years and years. That's how that is how they have perfected their work, right? And some of the work is exquisite, but stylists always go to Lorraine Schwartz, for on the red carpet, and they go to Neil Lane, and there are people who work with diamonds, as you know, but it's really sort of a closed network. You have to claw your way in if you don't have some sort of natural entree. And I think post George Floyd, Breonna Taylor murder, the jewelry industry started reckoning with the lack of representation. And there's not a lot that's changing, right? So, like, we're reckoning with things, we are acknowledging that things exist, but, like, what does that mean, right? Like, who is getting the jobs teaching at universities and MFA programs? Who is getting to run organizations? And I won't give any names, but you know what I mean? It's just like, there's a way that regular people, don't have access. And I actually do not see that changing. The one-offs, like this extraordinary exhibition at Sotheby's, it's great. But it's sort of presented like, oh my God, look, Black jewelry designers do really good work. And it's like, there are methods and that come from 5,000 years ago in West Africa. Like, Black people have been making jewelry for centuries, right? And we're now just, sort of acknowledging it. And some people are now just getting discovered. And I think, too, I actually don't call myself a jeweler for a number of reasons, but one of which is I feel like jeweler represents, I feel like I don't belong to the exclusive club that is jeweler, right? That's why I call myself a metal artist. And, and I'm fine with that, right? Like, I'm really fine with that. But, there's a delineation in class and access, right? Like, There absolutely is. And as long as we just sort of talk about it and not make room for other people, like nothing really changes, right?
Right. And I want to ask you a question, might be really difficult to answer. Your picture perfect um, solution in your mind, take away materials are one thing, materials cost money. Take away access to materials, access to space. Culturally speaking, what's your picture perfect ideal way of breaking down those inroad barriers for
But you
people
can't
of
take
color
that
to get
away.
into jewelry?
But you can't take that away because this is, you know, like this is where it starts, right? Like it's not even just Black people, right? It's all kinds of people, right? You can't take away access to capital, access to materials, access to space, right? Like you can't take that away because that is so crucial. I mean, my program doesn't have space. And so nothing can happen in Oakland until there is some access to affordable space, right? Like,
so is that what how you just answered that access to those tangibles actually comes first before access to that enclosed bubble that is the jewelry trade. I'm
no,
just trying.
I think that those things happen simultaneously, right? Like, so, you know, I've had people ask me to talk on their panels, right? And what they want me to do is talk about inequity in the business, right? And and they have loads of money, but they don't make any kind of contribution to my program. They have all kinds of networking possibilities. They don't do anything to help us find a space or anybody else like us to find a space. They don't do anything to encourage or otherwise welcome in people of all entry points, right? Like I said, some of the people in that Sotheby's exhibition have been doing it for years and their work is exquisite. Why are they not sitting on different
Yeah.
in different organizations?
Right. Or
Why are they
teaching
not
or
exactly?
yeah.
Why are they not in decision making um, um, uh, places? Like why is that, right? And it's just like, you know, I've heard this, you know, for a long time. Well, you know, there are not a lot of people who are qualified, right? And that's bullshit, right? Like that is always a lie. You know, men will say, well, there's not a lot of people who are qualified, and there are qualified women. They don't see them, and they are happy with things as they are. You know, state departments will be like, there are not a lot of people who are qualified, and there are people who are qualified, but they don't see them, and they're working really hard not to see them, you know? And so, you know, I've had people reach out to me and ask me how to start my program where they are, where they have a lot of money and they can start a program for Black people in their neighborhoods. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why wouldn't you bring my program to where you are? If you have the access and you have the capital, like, why wouldn't you bring an already established program there instead of, because nobody wants to pay me for my time. Nobody wants to pay me for my curriculum. Nobody wants to pay me for my expertise because people don't see me as deserving. And so like you know, I think it's really important that we think about it in like really, in global terms. It's not as simple. It's not a simple solution, right? Because there are all kinds of ways that we can attack inequity. But what we do is just give it lip service. And I think it makes some people feel better.
Yes. Oh, there's Ann's lights.
Dramatic punctuation.
I'm gonna take that cue right there as our cue to open up for question and answer. It's we're 15 minutes before the hour, so please, our guests, any questions you have for Karen or Ann, just throw them in the chat or the Q&A box or the chat box, and I will read them out loud. Engaging your brain in new ways. What does that mean to you, as far as we talked about it before, about how much that just opens your mind in emotional health, physical health?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times when you come to any kind of learning, there's a way that you come to it, or my experience has been that you come to it intellectually. And I think what I want students to do, and you can speak to this, and I think that you did allude to this, is that we want students to come to it, you know, completely open, right? Like we want students to not think just intellectually, but think about, like, why am I so freaked out by fire, right? Why am I like losing it because I didn't get this soldering right on the first shot, you know? And you know, I am always transparent and vulnerable with students. I tell them, let me tell you how long it took me to learn how to properly solder, right? Like soldering, you know, and particularly bezel setting, right? Because of course everybody's like, yikes, you know, I still feel like my bezels are not as perfect as X, you know, like, but I think it's important that we come to this, that my students are open and not just thinking about things intellectually.
A statement from someone, and again, if you have questions for Karen or Ann, put them into the Q&A box at the bottom. Just a guest, I completely agree that access to training for jewelry and metals is a significant problem. I've been trying to connect to local STEM programs, but they don't see metal arts as part of those programs in my area. I'm not sure which area this is, but that probably relates to a lot of areas.
I'm sure.
Yeah. A question I have, you were just talking about access and what it means to be a person of color as a jeweler now, and you're referencing the Sotheby's exhibit and how these jewelers have been doing this for 30, 40 years. How do you translate that to the young women that you're bringing through your program, that, you know, I want to teach you this for all these reasons, but this is what you're facing?
It goes back to our origin story. Representation is important, right? From the very first cohort, we always had Black women metal artists come in and talk about what they do and show examples of what they do. I bring in examples of the work that I do, and I talk about things that I do and why. I want them thinking about who they are and why they're drawn to something. You know, it's really, for me, I think it's just really important that they get to see that there are people who look like them who do this. And there are people who look like them who work in diamond engagement rings. And there are people who work like them who, you know, work in, you know, extraordinary pave, you know, Fabergé eggs type things. You know, representation is important.
In all sincerity, Karen, what can I do to help? I'm a person in the jewelry industry. I have access, I have opportunity. What specifically, tangibly can I do to help We Wield the Hammer?
Well, we can talk about that because, you know, we need all kinds of things, right? So everybody who's listening could buy one of our gorgeous work aprons, right? That helps us, right? Because not only does it get our name out, but it gives us some it helps with
Walk
our
around money.
Right. We need funds. We need operating funds, especially because we are like finally literally about to reopen. And so it's funny because a friend of mine told me about Jack Dorsey and how he was giving away millions and millions of dollars to worthy people. And she was like, just tweet Jack Dorsey and tell him you need money for We Will the Hammer. And I was like, tweeting doesn't work like that. Like, I don't know how tweeting works, but it doesn't work like that. But, underneath that ridiculous suggestion is, finding people who will support this program in an ongoing way, right? And the other thing that we absolutely need is we need a deputy director, right? Because I have literally been running this program solo, right? Every single dollar that we have brought in, I've had my hand in it, and I'm not a development person. Every bit of social media, I have controlled that. Every sale that we've made, I can't, right? And we're about to do hiring now, right? Which means we need, HR help, and we need a deputy director. And so, more than anything, we need a space in Oakland, and we need operating funds,
What you just said before about that, I just want to repeat, because that's kind of the most important thing you said, is we need financial support in an ongoing way.
Absolutely.
Like, the ongoing way is the key word right there, because you can get thrown donations or what have you, but if you don't have continuity and a sustained mission,
Absolutely.
then yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said, for the first 2 years, not only did I not get paid, but I carried the program. Like, everything that happened came out of my own pocket. But over the last year, like, I haven't been able to make art myself at all, right? Like, I've been so fixated on the program, which is why we've been able to grow the way we are. And I'm very proud of it. But I miss making for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I miss making for my customers. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what we need. And, so, Ann, if you're still there, if you know Jack Dorsey, tell him we need a building.
I mean, stranger things have happened.
I mean, we need a space in Oakland. But, so yeah, I mean, like, that's the broader thing. And I'm happy to talk to you about, like, possibilities and things like that. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I talked so much.
Oh, please.
It was brilliant.
You are wonderful. And North Bennett Street School loves what you're doing and your work and your mission. And thank you so much for being with us, giving us your time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And Ann, thank you for being with us. You live here. So. And thank you to all our guests for being with us this afternoon.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, have a great evening, and we'll see you next time on the Next in the Making.
And we'll talk.
We will talk. Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Great afternoon.
Take care.